And it's my honor now to present Her Excellency, the President of the Slovenian Republic, to the floor. Please.
Hello, everybody. Madam President Sakeropoulou, President Milatovic, President of the Delphi Forum, Tsomokos, dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Tsomokos, for inviting me to this conference and allowing me to say a few words on this occasion, the 9th edition of the distinguished Delphi Economic Forum. Being here for the first time is not only a great honor for me personally, it is also a chapter in a truly beautiful story of friendship between Greece and Slovenia that President Katerina Sakeropoulou and I have been developing since last year when Her Excellency kindly accepted my invitation to attend the Bled Strategic Forum in Slovenia. So let me say from the bottom of my heart, dear Katerina, thank you very much for your hospitality and the friendship that Greece is showing to my country, to Slovenia. My reflections today will touch on current political issues, but only briefly. I will focus more on topics that are critical to our success in finding a path to a more stable and secure future for all of us. I will pay particular attention to the concept of development justice. In this regard, I will also address the question of why less is more and that we can live better with less. As a civilization, we have made great strides economically and scientifically. But for all the progress humanity has made, we have not yet achieved the goals enshrined in the UN Charter. Not only we are witnessing wars of aggression that we thought were a thing of the past, not only we are witnessing terrorist attacks and inter-community clashes on an unprecedented scale. The sanctity of life and human dignity are obliterated when one belongs to a wrong ethnicity or religion. With the increasing abuse of artificial intelligence, civil society is coming under further attack. Freedom of choice, thought, and religion, as well as minority rights, are under increasing threat. Yes, the use of artificial intelligence, which represents a technological breakthrough of historic proportions with incredible potential for human development, is a blessing for our world. But believe me, it can also be a curse. It holds a frightening potential for dehumanization. The spread of disinformation is just one example of how autocrats and political leaders with malicious intent can manipulate the public and control the fate of their political opponents at home and abroad. While the problems we face as an international community are certainly not limited only to technological challenges, the means to overcome them have not changed. Power is still the key variable driving international relations, and national interests take precedence over the common good. It is becoming increasingly important to make one's own country great again at the expense of others, or in disregard of anybody else. I suggest that we do not accept this trend. We need to stop thinking about how to reclaim former glory, and we need to move away from the conventional mindset of what's in it for me. We need to engage in discussions about what's in it for us. Using military power, using the veto power in the UN Security Council, or ignoring the Security Council altogether in pursuing political and military goals is certainly not in our common interest. The idea of solving problems militarily is not only against international law. It is also an evidence of, dare I say, underestimation of human intellectual potential. Participating in competition, whether in sports or otherwise, makes sense because it motivates us to train and perform to the best of our abilities to win or do better next time. In war, on the other hand, killing each other does not make any sense because it only motivates mutual hatred and destructiveness. For many, unlike in sport, there is no next time. In war, both victors and the defeated lose lives. And let me just tell you the numbers for the war in Ukraine. You know the numbers in Palestine. It's close to 33,000 people who died. In Ukraine, it's 500,000. 300,000 in Ukraine, 200,000 in Russia, Russian soldiers. Just to make a comparison, the Afghanistan war lasted 4 years. 80,000 people died there. And just to repeat again, 500,000 in Ukrainian-Russian war. Which brings me to my central point. The world I want to live in is a world where peace, not war, is a normal state of affairs. This peaceful world can only be based on sustainable development. But to be meaningful to virtually every person on this planet, sustainable development must have a clear rationale. It has to seek justice, development justice. Talking about sustainable development as such makes no sense with millions hungry and undernourished and millions of young people without prospects. In a society in which a dignified life for all depends on a sustainable, people and nature-friendly economic and social orientation, development justice must have its logical place. Without such a deeply ethical orientation of the international community, we will not survive as a civilization. Of course, there are obstacles on the path to development justice, but we must overcome them with determination. Let us take environmental protection as a case in point. Yes, environmental policy is expensive and politically difficult to implement in the short term. But the damage that is being caused by climate change and environmental damage inflicted by warfare, plastic waste and electronic waste, among many others, is even more problematic. It runs into the tens of trillions of euros. Given the complexity of environmental problems, where failure to address them has multiple impacts, I seriously doubt that those in what I would call the opportunist camp who silently believe that we can afford to ignore environmental problems are correct. Many studies have proved the opportunists wrong. If we had not taken at least some of their warnings seriously already, our world would likely be in a worse state. Unfortunately, this kind of thinking does not yet have a truly global reach. In theory and in political declarations, it does, of course, but not in practice. Despite undeniable progress in the fight against climate change, the business as usual mentality persists, and above all, development justice is not given the attention it deserves. More work needs to be done to convince people that investing in our environment and equitable development is worthwhile. Too many politicians continue to legitimize their existence primarily with economic growth figures. But measures to increase economic growth, such as cuts in public spending, privatization, and tax cuts, are not the way to achieve greater development justice. Moreover, the lack of development justice has harmful effects. For example, the poorest are the first victims of war and the effects of climate change globally and domestically. For many of our citizens, it has been shocking and heartbreaking to see the desperation in the eyes of these people, forced to abandon their homes, left without access to regular food, without access to drinking water, without access to sanitation and access to quality or even any education. these same starving, vulnerable people have often become a security issue and an object of populist political campaigns to defend us against them. And just to give you a couple of more numbers. Do you know how many liters of waters we use per day in a normal environment per person? It's 120 liters. Do you know how many liters of water the people in Palestine have right now? 3 liters of water. And I'll just imagine how they can survive. And it's breaking in my heart every single time when I see that food and water are used as a hybrid tactics of war. So we cannot accept that have-nots can become a security problem as a matter of course. We must assume that everyone who is born into this world has the right to a dignified life. Yes, that too is a theory. Reality shows us something different. The report presented in Davos this year is downright depressing. The richest 5% have increased their wealth, but 60% of the world's population has become poorer. And we must fight, we really must fight this reality. There are at least 3 premises on which development justice needs to be built. Firstly, the richer part of this planet must learn how to live with less. At present, we are consuming 2.5 planetary resources in my country, in Slovenia, which is simply not sustainable. Secondly, data on economic growth as a measure of development and progress should not be a headline in the media. As the UN Women Report states, growth does not always produce or reduce poverty and does not create equal opportunities for progress. Presently, it even deepens inequalities. A growth model based on consumption and intensive exploitation of resources has not only accelerated the climate crisis, it is also based on the exploitation of poorly paid or even unpaid labor of the poor, women, children, and migrants. And this is wrong. This is not the path to development justice. To be able to make a good contribution to society and the country you live in, you need to be paid a decent wage, be subject to fair taxation, have access to good public services, and finally enjoy a dignified retirement. Thirdly, to live with less but better, we need to act seriously on fairer taxation of the richest, by which I mean both companies and individuals. Taxing their wealth is an investment in the quality development of the society of which they are a part of. A society that decides that no one will be left behind is safer because it is less prone to conflict and extremist behavior. More and more wealthy people are realizing the importance of the principle less is more but better, and they can hardly be called idealists. I'm thinking of 200 millionaires who addressed the Davos Forum a year ago and called for the super rich to be taxed much more if we are serious about tackling rising inequality. I'm also thinking about the future generations. Chances are that they will be left with a heavy burden on the environment, destroyed habitats, and deeply divided societies. This cannot be allowed. This is a way, and this is why accomplishing development justice is not a distant dream. It becomes a reality the moment those who have more money realize that their investments in sustainable development and development justice will result in long-term benefits. Without sustainable and equitable development, our civilization has no future. But let us not only talk about the rich people, let us talk about the politicians as well. 193 countries are members of the United Nations. There are 205 countries currently on our planet. 205 are members of the Olympic Committee. So that means 205 leaders who have the responsibility for 8 billion people. And this year we have a super electoral year. half of the planet's population will go to voting polls. 4 billion people. And I'm often asking myself, are we, the leaders of the world, aware enough of the responsibility on our shoulders? I too often have the feeling that we are not aware of that responsibility. And just to say one quote, which is following me on my daily political life. Do you know what's the difference between a politician and a statesman? The politician is going to work the way to win the next election, but the statesman or a stateslady will work for the next generations. Please remember this sentence. In conclusion, I hope we can agree on one thing. If we want to live better, we have to realize that indivisible peace and human dignity for all are values that are not for sale. We have to invest in both. Investing in development and in an ecologically sustainable way of life that enables one part of the world's population to have more than they have today and live better, and one part of the world to have less and still live better, is the best investment humanity can make to maintain political stability and international peace and security. And on the subject of peace, let me leave you with my final thought. It is a year of the Olympic Games. As we all know, the Games are closely connected with the history of Greece, a country with a great passion for sport, as is my country, Slovenia. At the Olympic Games in ancient Greece, the competitions were not disturbed by wars. Each of us, no matter where we come from, should not hesitate to remind the warring parties around the world of this venerable tradition, not only on this occasion, not just in the United Nations, in General Assembly, but every day, here and everywhere. Thank you very much. I hope I was not too long, but I spoke from my heart. Thank you.
Hvala lepo, Madam President. Thank you very much for your visit.